Radhika Venkatesan. I currently work as a scientist in the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research in Kolkata. I was born in Hyderabad and I grew up in Chennai, where my dad had a job. And I think science came into our family much very early because my dad likes to explore and repair a lot of things at home. So we used to buy some magazines for electronics, and that's how the first circuit making and repairing the transistor and all that training happened when we were kids. And my mom was also played a major role in me coming into science because we had a lot of interesting science done in the kitchen. So we used to do some little chemistry experiments in the kitchen and also learn a lot of languages in my home. So we were taught multiple languages at home, and we were also taught to read a lot as kids. And I think that's what helped me in the later stages. And science, it was a natural progression towards learning science and going towards those subjects in my school and college. So after my school, I think I started chemistry in my school itself, and we were fascinated by the experiments that we had to do in our schools. And that kind of carried on in the college as well, where again I did chemistry. And later on, I switched to a little bit of biology, where I started studying bioorganic chemistry, where I study the impact of small molecules in nature itself, like how nature uses small molecules, and many organisms apart from humans also use chemicals to communicate among themselves as well as to know about their environment. That is exactly what we study in the lab. More than at home, I think in school we were doing the actual experiments, and I still remember we had to do the salt analysis, where we had to identify. They just give us some white powder, and we had to find out what was in that, what was it made of, and that was super interesting for me as a child because I felt like a detective trying to solve this mystery of this white powder. And if it was a lead containing compound, we had this fantastic golden spangles experiment, where we can see this really gold dust coming into the test tubes. And this was the moment for us, like, to see the golden shower inside the test tube, and then we confirm it as lead. And then later, when I went to college, I learned this technique called chromatography, where you separate things into its own constituents. And I was introduced into this wonderful world of analytical chemistry, where we can use it for many things, including forensics, to identify things. So it was more like a solving the mystery type of attachment towards chemistry for me. Yeah. So I didn't have big dreams, except that I wanted to do science and keep asking fun questions. And most of the time we were wondering how stuff works, like how this works or that works, or how we can understand things. That was our major motivation. So I don't think I had any specific career in mind, but it was, as I said, it was naturally gravitating towards science. And at that time, I didn't even know that we could there was something like a PhD or something that came much later in my college, because of my professors who introduced me and said that we can pursue a career in science, which was eye opening for me. Yeah. So I actually gravitated towards chemistry early, but still there was something missing for me. I have many mentors in my career that I have to really acknowledge and thank. The first experience to a lab came to me in Indian Institute of Chemical Technology in Hyderabad, where I joined in the lab of Dr. Vairamani and Dr. Nageshwar Rao. So they introduced me to this world of mass spectrometry, which was an upcoming technique at that time. And the minute I saw this instrument, I kind of fell in love with this machine, because that's the first time from the textbook to the reality. So I saw it actually in actual substance, this instrument, and so I really loved it. And after that, I went to an organic chemistry lab, again thanks to Professor S. Chandrasekharan, in organic chemistry department in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So he gave me the opportunity to come and work in his lab for some time and learn real organic chemistry tools and techniques. That was my first introduction to PhD students and how research is actually done. From there, because I was well trained in mass spectrometry, I again moved to. I always wanted to know the story behind the molecules, because molecules are really nice and we can understand them in the lab, making them and understand their structure, stereochemistry, etc. But always my mind went back to asking questions like, who made these molecules in nature and what are they actually doing in nature. So this was always my interest. So I got an opportunity to work in the Center for Ecological Sciences because they were setting up a mass spectrometry facility there, and they were looking for a person who could analyze to them the molecules that they're isolating from plants and various sources. And again, this opportunity came because of Professor Balram in the molecular biophysics unit in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And then I joined in this lab in ecology with Professor Rennie Borges lab, where I was just blown away with the problems, like they were working with the spiders and ants and many, many wasps. So I came to know that many other organisms also use chemistry in their life, and much more complicated chemistry and much more sophisticated chemistry is going on in all around us. And that was my introduction to ecology. And from then on, I thought, sort of decided that I'll not work in pure chemistry but something more interdisciplinary. And then I came to know about this institute called the Max Planck Institute for Chemical Ecology, where people like me can also study nature and ecology. So I was lucky to be selected as for a PhD program there. And there I had the very good fortune of working under Professor Willem Boland, who was himself an organic chemist but who became a chemical ecologist. And that's how my journey started into chemical ecology, where we study the chemistry of plants and insects, and we look at why plants make these chemicals, how they make these, and what happens to these chemicals when insects actually eat the plant. And insects, on the other hand, they try to overcome these defenses and still try to feed on the plants. So that was my journey into this area, which is still quite nascent in our country. But India being a biodiversity hotspot, we see a lot of insects and plants all around us. And now that I am also having my own lab, I see many students are super interested in studying chemistry this way. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Indian cooking is full of chemistry, right? The way you put the turmeric and it turns color, and any vegetable you cook actually turns color. And even your when you deep fry something, how it kind of puffs up your puris. So this is what my mom would make us observe, and that is how you also test the quality of the food, right? So if the puri doesn't puff up, that means you have done a very bad job of dough making. So the quality check also happens very immediately. There is some science to our cooking, and I really enjoy cooking now also. And I remember what my mom taught me, because without that it's very hard to, it will be monotonous. So I think science is everywhere, even mostly in our kitchen we can see it, and immediately we test it, and there is no need for any NMR or mass spec to tell us whether it's good or bad. So I'm one of the very, I consider myself very fortunate, because my family had this passion towards science, and there was never ever a question of stopping me from studying or forcing me to do something that I really don't want to do. There was never this kind of no inclination towards that. So basically they let me do whatever I wanted, especially when I was switching fields so quickly. So it was not a direct trajectory for me, like from masters I didn't go directly to PhD, but I took a very long time to decide what I really like. And finally I found the area or subject that I like, and it took me some years to decide. And they never I was lucky that they never even questioned me why I was taking so long. But of course, in those years when I was not doing my PhD, I was not unemployed. I was working in different labs trying to learn different things, and they were happy with that. So I should say I was very lucky to grow up in such a household where they understood how important science is, and how there's nothing else that I could do, only science. And they never told me to go for a job or do something else that I didn't want to. So I think that plays a major role, because now I see students, sometimes they are held back by their families. They have a lot of pressure to keep moving to the next stage of their career when they are still in the exploratory phase. I think coming into a PhD and making this decision of going into the PhD itself is quite big. And people have to take some time to really find the field they really like. Then only it can can move go longer in that direction. Yeah. So my father was a man who never gives up. So if anything doesn't work, we never throw away anything in our home. So we try to repair it, and I mean the electronic stuff. So my father used to hunt for the spare parts, and then try to make it work. And that is something I really learned early on, that you have to spend a lot of time with any problem to solve it. It is not going to solve very quickly. If it is taking longer, that means we have to put more efforts. It's not like it's not a solvable problem. So that is something I learned from my dad: problem solving, and the time you have to give, and you have to acquire the necessary tools and knowledge to actually repair it. It's not, you shouldn't give up so easily. And mom is a very patient person, so she can really, sometimes wait for us really really long time. And so that is something I think I inculcated from my mom, though I'm very impatient sometimes to get my results and get things going. But these are the values I think I really got from my parents: to be patient, and also never to give up quickly without trying much. I should say I have been quite lucky in that way. The low must be in my life was only when I could not find the subject I like. I knew I wanted to do a PhD, but I wanted something more than chemistry in the lab. And I'm a kind of outdoor person. I like to be outside the lab sometimes. So that was the challenge, to find the interdisciplinary area. Maybe now it's better, but in those times, India, although we had departments, the boundaries were very strict between departments, so it was not very easy to switch from one area to the other for research. And even now I feel you can join any department you want, you are eligible, but then again you are in another, you're just crossing one boundary and going to the other boundary. So we need, I think, more interdisciplinary departments where students can get a flavor of both multiple subjects, because problems get more and more complex, and only people from different backgrounds can solve any meaningful problem in research. So I think this was a major challenge, and sort of a turning point for me, when I had to, decide whether I stay with pure chemistry, or I do slightly, interdisciplinary subject, which was quite hard to make this transition, because I could not join any department and say, okay, I'm going to join here for PhD. I think the milestone major one was joining PhD at the Max Planck Institute for Chemical Ecology in Germany, where it kind of opened my world to, to seeing that chemistry is in the nature, and the nature, how natural interactions are dependent on chemistry. I think that was my major milestone. Before that, I think even entering an organic chemistry lab and doing a research project in Professor S. Chandrasekharan lab was also a major milestone, because that's when was my first exposure to actual research, and how is it possible or not, whether I can be a student, PhD student or not. That kind of exposure I got only in IISc Bangalore. Yeah. I have been lucky to have many mentors. I had mentioned previously Professor Dr. Vairamani from IICT Hyderabad and Nageshwar Rao. They introduced me to mass spectrometry and taught me this technique, which at that time was very new in the country, and it was a national center for mass spectrometry at the time, and I had the good fortune of learning from them. And then, of course, Professor S. Chandrasekharan gave me an opportunity to work in his lab in a project. It was on a tuberculosis drug that I was working, and it was my first entry into a research lab working with PhD students in the organic chemistry department. From there, of course, I'm very very grateful that I got introduced to Professor Balram from Molecular Biophysics Unit in again Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He's a peptide chemist, and till today I look up to him, and he's a great inspiration for me. And whatever I do, I think I owe a lot to these people. Without Professor S. Chandrasekharan and Professor Balram, I think it would have been very, very difficult, and people like me would never have gotten introduced to this wonderful world of research and changing into interdisciplinary fields. Yeah. So in biology in India, somehow we have many women scientists, and so since I wanted to switch from chemistry into ecology, I had the good fortune of meeting Professor Rennie Borges, it's a great scientist and who has been working in this multidisciplinary area since very long time at the Indian Institute of Science in the Center for Ecological Sciences. So she is a great role model because I look up to her career and how she could develop and this new area of research in the country, and also set up a nice lab and study natural systems. So after that, I have met quite a lot of great women scientists who have struggled, and then who made way for people like me to come up later in their life. So this is what I try to do to my students as well, to create the path, to make the path clear so that other women can become scientists. But chemistry so far remains dominated by male scientists somehow, and I hope it will change soon in the future. Yeah. No, I was not shifting my subject very often. I thought it was a very natural thing to do, from moving from chemistry to chemical ecology, which is largely just chemistry happening outside the lab that we do. But I have been quite lucky that I did not face any discrimination, maybe because I was. I was in very good with very good people who always had passion for science and less towards all these discrimination. So I somehow did not face it, but I know it is possible. There have been many cases, and I've heard from other people how bad it can be, and I hope it changes. And you know I think success means when you get answers to some of your questions that you have asked out of curiosity, and failure only is only very personal. When you give up on a problem, I think that is what would count as failure. I think there is no real failure, because it's only our perspective of not doing things or things not working our way. That's what I would define as a failure. uh, but it is all relative and changeable anytime. So, as I've been saying, I work in this area of chemical ecology, which is a marriage between chemistry and ecology. So, usually, chemists who go to biology, they study macromolecules or proteins, but here we study small molecules and how they impact the life of plants and insects. So, basically, we are trying to understand plants make a lot of metabolites. Plants are excellent chemists, and they do this to protect themselves from many attackers. And plants, as you know, cannot run away from danger. They have to stand in the same place for their throughout their life and face whatever comes. And they do this only with chemistry, and they make a lot of these defensive compounds to protect themselves against these attackers. But insects, the major attackers, they are also co-evolving with the plants, and they try to come up with detox strategies to break down these plant defenses, and so that they can eat. So we work on this plant insect interactions and trying to see if we can bring back plant defensive compounds as for plant protection. So majorly our work is towards agricultural chemistry. So we work with a lot of farmers. So the plant systems we work with are economically important crop plants. So our aim is to have a very sustainable and eco-friendly way of plant protection against pests without really killing all the insects like how we do today. So the idea is to first understand the basic defense mechanisms against insects in plants, and then to try and characterize these molecules and see if they can be again used against these insects. Yeah. So we our work, as I said, directly feeds into pest control and other pest management strategies. So we do own some patents for our identification of certain compounds that can be used in plant protection. We will soon be launching a small startup based on that, and we also have done many field trials with using our discoveries like these plant chemicals, and also we work on some natural enemies of these insects that are again insects that eat these, that are predatory or parasitic insects. So we do mass rear them, and we have also done field trials showing that how without using any chemical synthetic alternative we can do plant protection, just if we understand the basic plant insect interaction chemistry. That's how we look forward our research going into application, mainly in agriculture. Yeah, so now we are planning large scale field trials across the country in different climatic zones to see if the chemistries that we understood in one particular zone actually can be applied to different agroclimatic zones in India. Yeah, I try to live a sustainable life as much as possible. I use less plastic, of course, and I use less a car. I walk a lot, and this is some ways that I try to live in a personal space, and I try to recycle as much as possible, and I don't shop much. So, but there's a limit to it. So, of course, I try my best, but I think there is still a long way to go before I can call myself 100% sustainable. Yeah. So the lessons that I learned in my life is first look into yourself and try to understand your own personal, passion. So passion is the more key to science. So if you end up in a field that you don't like, then it's not going to work out. Which is what I tell my students also. Even if it is my lab and if they don't like it after 2 years, it's fine. We shouldn't be afraid to learn new things, and it is not a waste of time. But if you want to move on to another subject, or if you think this is not for you, that is the most difficult decision to make, but it has to be done. Only then you can do what you like. Otherwise you will be just doing whatever you are not really passionate about. So finding one's own passion is the key, I think. And that is even the most difficult one to do as well, because that doesn't happen just because you've studied a certain subject for a very long time doesn't mean you really like it. You have to develop a passion or a liking towards a certain area. And now research boundaries are very very thin, thankfully. So it is very easy to actually work on problems that can use your skill and background and try to solve it, instead of just switching very completely your field. That is also possible. And we should never shy away from learning new things, thinking that, oh, I've never learned this area, how will I, it's just a matter of hard work and trying to have that interest towards that area. So this is what I always say, don't be afraid to learn new things. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so life can be different for everybody, right? So they make the best decision possible in that situation. So I cannot really generalize and say everybody should do this. Of course they do what is best at that time point. But passion never dies. So if you like something, you will always come back to it at every time in your life. And the one thing then we should do is not regret making certain decisions. And but this interdisciplinary field, or even studying pure chemistry, I think the job opportunities are now more and more. But people have to be more open minded to think of other job things, like not only becoming a pure scientist, but there are also industry jobs, and the startup market is quite open now. And so entrepreneurship has to come in a big way in our country to, both for our country's sake and also for creating new jobs. And they are doing very very good. I mean, as you might very well know, the biotech startups in India, the scenario is quite promising. And this is something many women shy away from, because it's highly risk taking, and it's not something that everybody, it's not taught in colleges. Basically, I think this alternate career paths should also be taught in the colleges, so that we get an idea of other career opportunities that are available after studying masters or PhD, what can be done. Hmm. My one mantra would be just be curious and keep asking questions. You might not get the right answers, but don't stop asking the right questions. And just be happy in whatever you do. Try to find happiness, and that's the key to everything. Once you are happy in the field, in the any area that you select, curiosity and imagination will start flowing, and that's how it should be. So, in the institute where I am at the moment, we do have a high gender balance, and we try to maintain it even at the lab level. And I try to do many outreach programs, and also do some, for undergrads as well as in the school children. We do reach out to them, and they also visit the labs many times. And we try to organize science days and experiments for them to, get that curiosity going for science. And we also do it in local languages, and that has been really helpful to get more students interested in science. Yeah, I one thing I before coming to this field, I did not know about. I don't know any farmers, and I'm not from an agricultural family, so it was quite. I was a bit hesitant how I could communicate with them. But then I realized they are super kind people, farmers are very, very kind and very receptive to new technology as long as it helps them somehow. And all they want is to get rid of this insect that is eating their plant and killing all their plants. So I was lucky to meet very nice people, like in Karnataka as well as in the northeastern parts of India where we do most of our work. They're very kind and very helpful and super excited about the science. So we go there to collect insects and gather data on how much damage has happened already and how many times they spray, etc. So they do help us, and their children also come and help us to catch these insects, and they wait for the trap to be filled, so we place some traps for the insects. And the kids are super curious and they also come and join in this expedition that we do. And it has been a wonderful experience interacting with them, and I really, really hope in the future we can do something meaningful in a large scale, and help in a small way in agriculture. So many times, yeah, thank you. Many times in the lab we observe something, right? And then in the field it doesn't work, or it for some reason we don't know why something else is happening. And farmers, since they are always in the field and they are much better observers, they observe their plants very much every day. And when we visit them, they tell us many more stories that we didn't expect or we didn't even know that could happen in the lab. So for example, I work on a parasitoid wasp that is a natural enemy for the larva that is eating the plant. Larva is the herbivore, and these wasps come in to search for the larva and oviposit or lay their eggs into the larva, thereby helping the plant to get rid of the herbivores. So we work on such wasps, and in one of our field experiments, when we were trying to collect a wasp of a particular type, actually I came to know about another wasp from a farmer who has been observing this. And many wasps inject some venom and kind of make the larva either completely paralytic, or they sometimes even play with their memories and do some funny things. So he actually observed and told me that, oh, this wasp actually stings, and then it makes it leave the plant, walk away from the plant, and go to a nearby potato field, which I didn't believe in the beginning. I thought he was just telling me tales, but then it was true. I did find them in the potato fields, which is not their host plant. They are normally eating on cabbages. But after the wasp had stung this larvae, they had actually moved to the neighboring field, and that is where we found them, which was like, I can't still believe it that I found it, but that is true. And so many such things actually farmers tell us, which I think there's so much traditional knowledge in our country. It is just a matter of somebody documenting it or interacting with them to know the ground reality, because lab reality is something, but outside the world, real world problems are much different. So, like I was saying, I was introduced to ecology in Indian Institute of Science in the Center for Ecological Sciences. I am a chemist, and then I am looking only for molecules and their details. I never thought that animals use this. So there I learned many fascinating systems, like the fig and fig wasp, fig volatiles are abundantly emitted to attract these insects, which was the first time I did this practically. We trapped the fig volatiles, and then we also did some work with ants. And this was the first time I did this ant cafeteria experiment, which was like unheard of for me. So where we give food choice to the ants, and they do pick up the right sugars that they like. So there are many, many sugars, and they pick the right combination of sugars. And these kind of experiments were super fascinating and interesting for me at that time. And I would say I was completely sold to ecology, doing ecology and chemistry and ecology together, where we can understand why certain animals choose certain diet, and how they actually attract other animals using just chemistry. Because uh, our world, human world, is more visual, so we like to see things and experience our life based on many, many visual cues. But in the organismal other organisms, especially insects, it's completely olfactory. So they have a very high sense of smell, and capturing these volatiles has been my passion so far. And to understand the smells and the different odors that are emitted and also sensed by these insects emitted by plants. And that is something that I started newly in my career after I went to ecology. Yeah. Capturing the volatiles or the odors landscape. um, I haven't really thought about it, to be very honest. I think India is a great biodiversity hotspot, and we have multiple systems unexplored. And every time you walk out or you take a walk in the jungle or in a agricultural field, you come across so many fascinating insects and plant systems, and ants and many many things that, like, we are on a, it's a treasure trove of chemical ecology problems which nobody has looked into. So that would be the legacy, that we study the nature around us, and we are very lucky to live in such a rich and diverse place, where you don't have to really travel to very far to look at your research questions. They are just in your back garden or in your own garden you can work. And that is something that everybody should try to look around you, look around the nature around you, not just inside the lab. Please go outside and look at the chemistry happening outside as well. That is the legacy, I think. I think students mainly. I'm always, my students problem, they work on different interesting questions, and I always want to see them every day and what they are doing, because they do much better and much, good science. And I hope they become great scientists in the future. And students drive the lab, and I always look forward to the teaching sessions as well as my meeting with my students. So I think that's what wakes me up every day. I would have told her to go out and look outside much earlier than I did, because as a kid growing up in a school or a college in a protected concrete environment, you only see what is going on inside the lab. And I was very much passionate about science, but I did not know that science also, there are other animals and organisms. This was something that I learned much later in life. So if I have to go back and tell my younger self, I would tell her to go outside and take more nature walks and look around her. Yeah. Mm, I don't think I would undo anything, or maybe also not redo anything. I think I would have liked to learn something more new in my career, but I don't think I would do anything, any redos or undos. Yeah. I have the hobbies of reading books, and then I do take long walks. I like to walk a lot, and then I also try to do some yoga sometimes, and I think that's it. Self care. I travel a lot, which is kind of my second nature to travel. So I do like to travel to new places, meet new people, and now recently I've been traveling a lot for work, especially field work. But apart from that, also I like to travel a lot. I think that's nice. No, I think I would like to learn the violin. I think that's something I always wanted to learn, but I never got the chance.